Now we will talk about how this nerve originates within the brain stem. That means we're discussing here is intraneural course of glossopharyngeal nerve. So here you can see that there are actually 5 nerve fibers which are arising from the 5 different nuclei. The nuclei of visceral afferent is a combined nucleus. Special visceral and general visceral afferent is a combined nucleus. Now look here, first of all, you have to identify that what section you are seeing. This section you are seeing is the uppermost portion of the medulla. And how to get to know that it's medulla? Anteriorly, you will have these two bulgings. The bulgings are the pyramids. And then a little laterally, anterolaterally, you find another bulge. And these bulges are because of this corrugated purse type nucleus, the inferior olivary nucleus. Because of that, there are bulgings anterolaterally on the surface of medulla, and that's called olives. In the upper portion of the medulla, you find anterolateral bulges. These are called olives, and bulging is because of inferior olivary nucleus. Then posterolaterally, again, it has bulges there, and those bulgings are because of the inferior cerebellar peduncles, right? So anterior to lateral, you find these 3 bulges: pyramidal bulgings, olivary bulgings, then the bulging because of the inferior cerebellar peduncle. Then look here in the dorsal aspect, one more thing that will help you identify upper section, because the roof is not closed. The roof is not closed. This actually is the 4th ventricle, and the roof here will be formed by cerebellum. So because the upper portion of the medulla is open dorsally, and partly, these are inferior medullary velum. These partial projections, these are inferior medullary velum. And such type of open portion of the 4th ventricle you will also find in the lower pons. Remember? So the 4th ventricle you will find is open behind in case of lower pons and in case of upper medulla. Then if you go down in the lower section of the medulla, this thing will be closed by the inferior medullary velum. Okay, and one more thing, in the entire brain and even in the cerebrum, I told you there is a lot of meshwork of fibers, including the nuclei, sparse scattered nuclei, and that is called a reticular formation. Reticular formation is a very complex type of thing, not easily understood, and it's scattered in the brain stem. So there are tracts also, remember, medial reticulospinal, lateral reticulospinal tracts we discussed in the extra pyramidal tracts. So this portion here you find is the reticular formation, right? This is all a reticular formation. Embedded within this reticular formation, you will find these nuclei. So let's talk about all of them one by one. Here you find is the nucleus ambiguus. So nucleus ambiguus is an efferent functional column, and it's for the muscles derived from the brachial arches, 3rd, 4th, 6th arches. So from here, it will be the special visceral efferent fibers will emerge out, and because I believe you can slightly appreciate the colors of these nerve fibers, dark green colored nerve fiber, they have tried to show it. This is a lower motor neuron emerging from the nucleus, passing through the ipsilateral nerve. And because it's a lower motor neuron, you will find the cell bodies will be located here within the nucleus. Got it? Okay. The other efferent functional column will be inferior salivatory nucleus, and this will be general visceral efferent functional column, inferior salivatory nucleus. It is just above the dorsal nucleus of vagus. The same functional component in this vertical or in the longitudinal axis of this inferior salivatory nucleus. Above you will find a superior salivatory nucleus, and below to that you will find this dorsal nucleus of vagus. Okay, so from here again, these fibers which are emerging out, actually these are the preganglionic parasympathetic fibers, neurons. So their cytons will be lying here, and these fibers will run along the entire course and will reach extracranially and will relay there in the otic ganglion. From the otic ganglion, the postganglionic parasympathetic fibers will reach the parotid gland via the auriculotemporal nerve. So that means here also you don't find a cyton. Can you see there are cytons here in the 3 nerves, and those all the 3 will be afferents. Remember, there were 5 functional components. 2 were efferent and 3 were afferents. So these cytons you are seeing here are in the neurons of afferent functional components. This one, blue one, is the general visceral efferent parasympathetic outflow, and this one is special visceral efferent for the stylopharyngeus, muscles of the 3rd pharyngeal arch. Then let me tell you, while this nerve emerges here outside, it actually has 2 ganglions. You have a superior ganglion and an inferior ganglion. We'll talk about it. Let's see the fibers first. Then among the afferents, remember, first of all, the visceral fibers, sensations from the visceral area, that is posterior one third of the tongue, tonsils, soft palate, pharynx. So from this area, the general visceral afferents for the general sensations, they will be brought in here. Remember, can you see the red color fibers? They're reaching here in the nucleus of Tractus solitarius in the lower portion. Got it? And because they're first order sensory neurons, they will be pseudo unipolar neurons. Remember the spinal nerves, the typical spinal nerve I taught you in detail. So these are the first order pseudo unipolar neurons. The cytons will lie outside the CNS, and that collection of cytons is called a ganglion. And this ganglion will be homologous to the DRG of the spinal nerves, dorsal root ganglion. It's a sensory ganglion, and this also will be homologous to trigeminal ganglion, the Gasserian ganglion. It will be homologous, so same as geniculate ganglion of the facial nerve, that also is a sensory ganglion. So remember, the inferior as well as the superior ganglion of the glossopharyngeal nerve is a sensory nucleus, and it is same with the rest of the afferent functioning columns. Okay, so you're seeing is cytons here. Then the gustatory sensations from the posterior one third of the tongue, and including the sensations from circumvallate papillae, they will be brought in here through special visceral afferent nerve fibers carrying sensations of taste, and they will be relaying here in the upper portion of nucleus of Tractus solitarius. Again, because these are the first order sensory neurons, they will have their cytons located here in the inferior ganglion of glossopharyngeal. Now, the third one is the general somatic afferent, which brings in sensations of touch, pain, pressure, vibration from the middle ear and the communicated areas. So those sensations will be brought in here through these fibers coming from exteroceptive receptors for touch, pain, pressure, vibration sensations, and they will relay here in the chief sensory nucleus, and in case of pain, temperature, in the spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve. Got it? And because they are first order sensory neurons, they will be pseudo unipolar neurons. The cytons will be collected outside the CNS. So together, this collection of cytons form the inferior ganglion of glossopharyngeal nerve. Now let me ask you, there are some sensory fibers which do not have their cytons outside the CNS. First order sensory neurons having the cytons within the CNS is only in case of one tract, and that is the sense of proprioceptive sensations from the head and neck region. Okay, and those are the proprioceptive sensations brought in from the muscles of the head and neck area, because they are the unipolar neurons. So those neurons carrying proprioceptive sensations from stylopharyngeus muscle, their cytons you will not find here in these ganglion of the glossopharyngeal. Rather, they will straight away reach to the mesencephalic nucleus of trigeminal nerve, and the cytons will be within that nucleus, mesencephalic nucleus, right? So those are the first order neurons. So actually, you can compare that mesencephalic nucleus also sensory ganglion, same as the other sensory ganglions. The only thing is that it is located within the CNS. Got it? Now there will be some confusion because different authors have sometimes written differently, and let me tell you that these are actually two ganglion within this, jugular foramen. Because most of the afferents, they have the cytons here in the inferior ganglions. The main ganglion is the inferior ganglion of glossopharyngeal, and the superior ganglion is just a detached portion from this inferior ganglion. The main ganglion is the inferior ganglion of the glossopharyngeal nerve. Sometimes these first order neurons from the middle ear, they might have the cytons in the superior ganglion of the glossopharyngeal nerve. One more thing before I move to another slide, let me tell you, when you were seeing on the ventral aspect of the brainstem, there are sulcus, right? Like you have sulcus on the cerebral hemispheres, you even have sulcus on the brainstem, and you even have sulcus on the spinal cord. So in the spinal cord, there was this anterolateral sulcus in the spinal cord, and to that anterolateral sulcus, there were efferent nerve rootlets arising from the anterior horn of the spinal cord, right? So that means from the anterolateral sulcus, the rootlets which emerge out, they are actually efferent nerve fibers, autonomic fibers or the somatic fibers from the spinal cord. So here, this area here you're seeing is pyramid and olive. So in between pyramid and olive, there will be anterolateral sulcus extending down. In anterolateral sulcus will be more prominent in the middle and lower portion of the medulla, and from there, this 12th cranial nerve will arise, because that is pure motor nerve for the muscles of the tongue. Then again, compare with the spinal cord, there was this posterolateral sulcus in the spinal cord, from where the afferent rootlets were reaching in to the dorsal horn of the spinal cord. So posterolateral sulcus is actually the sulcus for attachment of sensory nerve fibers, sensory nerve rootlets. So remember, now this sulcus here between the olives and the inferior cerebellar peduncle, that side, if you continue to trace it down, then you will find that the sulcus which is posterolaterally located, and from this sulcus you will find the three nerves emerging, and those are 9th, 10th, and 11th cranial nerves from the medulla. So if you keep comparing with the spinal cord, that's why we're teaching neuroanatomy from down to above, caudal to rostral. So this will emerge here from the posterolateral sulcus of the brainstem above the vagus.